The lie you've been sold about strength. They told you strength was about muscle, about pushing through, about pretending you're okay even when you're falling apart. But they lied, because real weakness, it doesn't wear a broken body. It wears a broken mind, a tired soul, a man or woman who smiles on the outside, but is silently crumbling under habits they don't even know are destroying them. You were raised to look strong, to bury your emotions, chase validation, and never show vulnerability. But guess what? That's not strength. That's survival. That's noise. And it's keeping you exactly where they want you, powerless. The truth is, some of the habits you've been carrying around since childhood aren't just unhelpful. They are psychological shackles designed to keep you obedient, dependent, small. And what's worse, you've normalized them. They feel safe. They feel familiar. They feel like just how I am. But what if I told you that everything you believed about mental toughness, emotional maturity, and resilience was based on fear, not truth? What if I told you that the Stoic philosopher Epictetus, a former slave who rose to become one of the most powerful thinkers in Roman history, knew this very trap? He said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Let that sink in. The goal isn't to be tough. It's to be untouchable. Not because nothing hurts you, but because nothing owns you. And the only way to get there is to become painfully aware of the psychological habits keeping you weak and break them one by one. In this video, we're going deep into the subtle, everyday mind traps that are robbing you of your energy, your self-respect, and your potential. No fluff. No sugarcoating. Just the raw truth. Because someone out there has to say it. And today, it's going to be you who hears it. Ready? Let's begin. You apologize for existing. You ever notice how quickly you say sorry? Sorry for speaking. Sorry for asking. Sorry for taking up space. Sorry for being too much or not enough. It starts subtly, like apologizing when someone bumps into you, or shrinking your voice in meetings, or laughing after making a serious point, just to soften the edge. This is not humility. It's a programmed response, rooted in a deep, invisible belief. I'm not supposed to be here. You learned this in childhood, maybe from a parent who only gave love when you were quiet or when you performed. Maybe from a teacher who told you not to be too loud, too curious, too emotional. And slowly, you began to equate your existence with being a burden. So you compensated by being agreeable, by being small, by being endlessly sorry. But here's what the Stoics knew and what Epictetus lived. It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. Your self-opinion was programmed by people who were uncomfortable with your power, not your weakness. Let me ask you something. Would Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, master of his own mind, ever apologize for existing? No, because he knew that to shrink oneself is to insult the divine intelligence that made you. This habit, apologizing for your energy, your dreams, your opinions, isn't politeness. It's self-erasure, and it keeps you weak. It teaches others that your needs are negotiable, that your presence is optional, that your voice can be skipped. But here's what's worse. It convinces you of the same lie. You want to be powerful? Start here. Catch yourself every time you say sorry out of habit. Replace it with thank you when appropriate. Oh, not sorry I'm late, but thank you for waiting. Stand still when you speak. Let your words land without softening them with a nervous laugh or a self-deprecating comment. Own the air around you like you were meant to, because you were. The moment you stop apologizing for your presence is the moment others start respecting it. And most importantly, you begin to respect it. You chase validation like oxygen. You post something, then you check again, and again. No likes, no hearts, no reactions. Suddenly, your chest tightens. You start doubting yourself. Was it too much? Was I too loud? Too real? Validation. We chase it like a drug, because somewhere deep in the architecture of our psyche, we were wired to believe, if I'm not seen, I don't exist. This is no accident. As children, love often came with conditions. You got praise when you got an a hug when you did something helpful, silence or disapproval when you failed or showed emotion. So, your nervous system learned to associate external approval with safety. Fast forward to today, you're no longer a child, but the habit remains. You shape your identity around applause. Your confidence fluctuates with feedback. Your peace depends on others' reactions. The Stoic philosopher Seneca saw through this trap centuries ago. He wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor." Validation is not just about compliments. It's the craving behind it that keeps you poor in spirit. And here's the catch. The more you chase it, the more empty you feel. Because real confidence isn't built on others clapping for you. It's built on you standing alone, clapping for yourself in the silence. Let me ask you something painful, but honest. Would you still do what you're doing if nobody ever applauded? Would you still speak your truth, still chase your goals, still wake up and show up if no one ever noticed? That's where real power lies. In doing the right thing, not the praise thing. Here's your shift. Post without refreshing. Create without comparing. Speak without softening yourself to be palatable. Trust your gut, even if it makes others uncomfortable. Choose purpose over applause. Because when you detach from needing to be liked, you become someone they respect. Marcus Aurelius, in all his emperor wisdom, never once mentioned likes. He simply asked, "Is this the right thing to do?" Then do it. Let others say what they will. When you live like that, rooted, centered, anchored in your own approval, you become unfuckwithable. You avoid discomfort like it's a disease. Let's be real. The moment things get uncomfortable, you scroll. You snack. You bail. You say, "I'll do it tomorrow." But tomorrow becomes never because today was too hard, too awkward, too uncomfortable. But here's the brutal truth. Your life is stuck because you're addicted to comfort. Not just physically, but psychologically. You avoid tough conversations. You stay silent instead of setting boundaries. You stay in toxic relationships because breaking free would mean being alone for a while. You hate your job, but fear the unknown more than the misery you already know. You think you're protecting yourself, but all you're doing is building a prison out of pillows. And you wonder why nothing changes. Now imagine for a second a man in ancient Rome, wearing a simple robe, eating one meal a day, sleeping on the floor just to train his mind. That man was Epictetus, one of the most powerful Stoic philosophers of all time. Born a slave, beaten, humiliated, but mentally unshakable. He said, "Difficulties are things that show a person who they are." You've been avoiding discomfort like it's a threat. But what if it's actually your teacher? Because here's the thing, growth doesn't happen in the easy. Muscles don't build from light weights. Confidence doesn't come from compliments. Discipline doesn't grow when everything is convenient. You want to be stronger, more respected, more powerful? Then learn to sit in the fire. Not forever, but long enough to let it shape you. Here's what discomfort might look like. Waking up at 5 a.m. when your body begs for the snooze button. Saying no when your voice shakes. Starting over even when your heart is exhausted. Speaking your truth even when it risks rejection. And here's the reframe. Discomfort isn't danger. It's the entrance fee to the life you say you want. Because everything you want, the body, the peace, the confidence, the business, the respect, lives just past the door of discomfort you keep avoiding. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If it is endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining." Modern translation, if it won't kill you, walk through it. Because the pain of discipline will always be lighter than the pain of regret. You crave validation over truth. Let's not sugarcoat this. You care more about being liked than being real. You filter your words. You shrink your voice. You post what gets likes, not what reflect your truth. And here's the cost. You don't even know who you are anymore. You're a projection, a highlight reel, a carefully crafted persona built to survive in a world of opinions. But here's the thing no one tells you. Validation is a drug. And like any drug, the more you use it, the more it controls you. You start saying yes when you mean no, You downplay your success so others don't feel uncomfortable. You stay quiet to avoid conflict, even if it eats you alive inside. You confuse peacekeeping with people-pleasing. But you know what that really is? Self-betrayal. Now let's go back to one of the greatest Stoics to ever live, Seneca. He was wealthy, powerful, an advisor to emperors. But you know what he valued most? Integrity. He said, "What is more shameful than to be praised by others for what you are not?" Let that hit you. If people love the version of you that isn't even true, then you don't feel loved, your mask does. And that's the tragedy of chasing validation. Even when you win, you lose. So how do you fix this? You start with one simple principle. Seek truth, not approval. That means telling people how you really feel, even if it's messy. Owning your weirdness, your flaws, your edges. Saying "I don't know" without shame. Choosing growth over comfort, even when it means standing alone. Will people judge you? Yes. Will some walk away? Absolutely. But the ones who stay will love you for you. Here's the paradox. The more you stop chasing validation, the more respect you'll attract. Because authenticity is rare in a world that runs on image. Seneca once said, "Be silent as to services you have rendered, but speak of favors you have received." That's wisdom. Live quietly, live truthfully, and let your life speak louder than your posts. Because real strength isn't loud. It doesn't need to convince. It just is. And once you no longer need everyone to like you, you'll finally be free to love yourself. You confuse comfort with peace. You think you're at peace, but really, you're just comfortable. There's a difference, a dangerous one. See, comfort feels like safety. It's warm, predictable. Your routines are familiar. Your environment is controllable. But beneath it all, there's a quiet dissatisfaction, a whisper in the back of your mind saying, "This isn't it, this isn't who you're meant to be." You ignore it because discomfort is scary, because growth is uncertain, because real peace, inner peace, doesn't come wrapped in ease. It comes through struggle, through sitting with pain, through confronting everything inside you that you've been running from. One of the wisest Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." You know what that means? True peace isn't found in soft surroundings. It's built in a storm, when you remain calm despite the chaos. When you stand grounded while life tests every inch of your soul. When you let go of needing things to go your way, and instead train your mind to respond with resilience. But most people don't want that kind of peace. They want Netflix, fast food, scrolling, numbing, avoiding. They want temporary relief, not lasting transformation. Comfort keeps you small. Peace expands you. Comfort keeps you hidden. Peace demands presence. Comfort lets you avoid. Peace requires awareness. So ask yourself, are you truly at peace? Or just numb? If your days are quiet but your soul feels unsettled, if you smile but you feel disconnected, if you say "I'm fine" but you feel stuck, you're not at peace. You're just sedated. And here's the twist. To reach real peace, you'll need to get uncomfortable first. You need to break patterns. Have hard conversations. Sit with your childhood pain. Hold space for your rage, your grief, your guilt. Not to fix it all immediately, but to finally face it. Because the only way out is through. Marcus Aurelius faced wars, betrayal, death, and chaos, and still found peace. Why? Because he didn't avoid discomfort. He met it with courage, with clarity, with control over himself, not the world. That's the peace you're searching for. Not comfort, not numbness, but clarity, power, freedom from the inside out. So the next time you find yourself saying, "I just want peace," ask yourself, am I willing to go through discomfort to earn it? If the answer is yes, you're finally ready to live. Not comfortably, but consciously. You perform strength instead of living it. You act strong. You talk tough. You hold it together on the outside. But inside, you're crumbling. Quietly. This is performed strength. It looks impressive. It sounds wise. But it's hollow. And it's one of the most damaging psychological habits people carry, especially men. See, you were raised to believe that strength means showing no emotion, no fear, no tears, no softness. That to be respected, you must appear invincible. But that's not strength. That's armor. And armor might protect you, but also disconnects you from others, from yourself, from life. Real strength? It's quiet. It's not loud, not performative. It's in showing up even when you're terrified. It's in saying, I need help when your pride wants to say I'm fine. It's in letting yourself feel pain so it doesn't control you from the shadows. And this isn't a modern idea. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, taught this over 2,000 years ago. He said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. That's real strength. How you respond when life breaks your plans. When people hurt you. When you're on your knees, but choose not to run from the lesson. Performed strength hides. True strength reveals. Performed strength avoids vulnerability. True strength embraces it. Performed strength needs approval. True strength stands firm without applause. Let me ask you something. When's the last time you let someone see your rawness? Your disappointment? Your fear? Not as a weakness, but as a window into your humanity? Because here's the truth. The world doesn't need another stone-faced, emotionally absent performer. The world needs men and women who are anchored in themselves, who are strong enough to lead and soft enough to feel, who don't just perform strength for attention, but live it in silence, in struggle, in self-respect. You've been taught to suppress, but the Stoics didn't avoid emotion, they mastered it. They didn't pretend life didn't hurt, they built fortitude within it. So take off the armor, not for everyone, but for yourself. Because the day you stop performing strength is the day you start living powerfully. And in that space, real growth begins. Real healing begins. Real freedom begins. You let fear drive every decision. You call it logic. You say it's being careful. You convince yourself it's just being realistic. But underneath all of it is fear, quietly gripping the wheel. Every time you hesitate to speak up, every time you don't apply, every time you settle for less, fear is there, whispering, what if you fail? What if they laugh at you? What if you lose everything? And so you stay safe. You play small. You rationalize your inaction. This is the psychological habit of fear-based living, where your entire life becomes a reaction to what you don't want to happen. You avoid rejection. You dodge discomfort. You tiptoe around confrontation. But you also never grow. You never break through. You never really feel alive. Here's the truth no one likes to hear. Fear doesn't just protect you. It also limits you. The Stoic philosopher Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Let that land. Most of what you fear isn't real. It's projected pain. You create stories in your mind, then live as if they're true. You don't ask for the raise because they might say no. You don't post that content because people might judge. You don't start the business because you might fail. But what if they say yes? What if people need your message? What if you succeed in ways you never imagined? You'll never know, because fear locked you in a box and called it wisdom. Here's what the Stoics believed. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's action in the presence of it. Fear is natural, but letting it dictate your life, that's a choice. You must start choosing growth over comfort, freedom over familiarity, and your future self over your current fears. Because the longer you let fear drive, the farther you drift from the person you're meant to become. Start small. Have the hard conversation. Speak your truth. Take the step, even if your voice shakes. Each time you do, you weaken fear's grip and strengthen your own spine. Fear will always be there, but it doesn't have to own you. So ask yourself right now, what would you do today if fear wasn't a factor? That's the real you. That's the voice you've been silencing. And that's the path to power, peace, and purpose. You constantly compare your life to others. You wake up, scroll for 5 seconds, and suddenly you feel behind. Someone your age just bought their second property. Another is vacationing in Bali. Someone else went viral again. And there you are, in your room, in your routine, wondering, am I failing at life? This is the psychological habit of comparison, and it is quietly wrecking your peace. We're wired to compare. It's biological. But in the modern world, it's become toxic because we no longer compare ourselves to just the village. We compare ourselves to the entire world, 24/7, in our pockets, before breakfast. And the worst part? We compare our real life to someone else's highlight reel. You don't see their debt, their breakdowns, their doubts. You just see the filtered wins, the curated perfection, and you begin to shrink, to doubt your path, to feel like no matter what you do, you'll never catch up. But here's the Stoic truth, as shared by Marcus Aurelius. Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. In other words, the moment you chase validation outside yourself, you surrender your joy. When you let others become the benchmark for your success, you forget that your timeline is unique. Your story is yours alone. And life is not a competition. It's a practice. You see, comparison is the thief of gratitude. And without gratitude, even your blessings feel like burdens. So how do you break free? You stop measuring your worth by someone else's metrics. You zoom in on your own growth. You celebrate small wins. You limit your exposure to things that distort your perception of success. And most importantly, you remind yourself daily, the only person you're meant to be better than is the version of you from yesterday. This is where confidence begins, not for being the best, but for being aligned. When you're aligned with your values, your goals, your pace, you're unshakable. No matter who's ahead or behind, the world will always offer someone doing better. But the Stoics knew this. Real power comes not from beating others, but from mastering yourself. So next time comparison creeps in, don't feed it. Observe it. Then bring the focus back to your lane. You're not behind. You're just on a different chapter. And it's a damn good one. You avoid stillness because it forces you to feel. Have you ever sat alone in silence and felt uncomfortable? Like something within you starts to rise up? An emotion, a memory, a truth you've been avoiding? That's not random. That's your inner self trying to speak. But in today's hyper-stimulated world, we drown it out. We fill every second with noise. Podcasts, notifications, Netflix, scrolling. Because silence, stillness, it confronts us. And most people fear that confrontation more than anything. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Avoiding stillness is a psychological habit that keeps you weak. Because in the absence of stillness, you avoid the very work that would set you free. You never face the grief you buried. You never challenge the belief that says you're not enough. You never process the pain, so it controls you from the shadows. Stoic philosopher Seneca said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Stillness brings those imagined fears into the light. And yes, it's uncomfortable at first. But discomfort is not the enemy. It's the invitation. It's the doorway to clarity, healing, power. Let me tell you a story. There was a young man, restless, always moving, always working, achieving, performing. He never sat still, because when he did, the silence whispered truths he wasn't ready to hear. You're afraid to be alone. You haven't forgiven your father. You don't believe you're worthy without accomplishments. So he avoided stillness like a plague. Until one day, everything collapsed. Burnout, anxiety, numbness. That moment forced him to be still, to sit in silence and listen. It was brutal, but it became the beginning of his strength. He learned to feel, to process, to let go. And for the first time in his life, he found peace. Not from doing, but from being. That man was me. And maybe it's you too. Stillness is not passive. It's the most active inner work you can do. Because when you sit in silence long enough, you meet yourself. You see where your wounds live. You hear what your heart actually wants. And you remember who you were before the world told you who to be. So if you want to grow stronger, start with stillness. Make space for silence. Journal, meditate, reflect, even 10 minutes a day. Feel what needs to be felt. Don't run. Don't distract. Just breathe and let yourself hear the truth. Because as the Stoics teach, he who conquers himself is the mightiest warrior. Confucius, echoed by Stoics, and that conquest begins in stillness, reclaiming your strength by rewiring the invisible. You've made it to the end. That already tells me something powerful about you. You're not here for fluff. You're not just looking for motivation that fades in a day. You're searching for something deeper, to understand why you feel stuck, why you hold yourself back, why, no matter how hard you try, something inside still feels small. And now you know, it's not just your actions that weaken you. It's the unseen psychological habits you carry every day. The way you betray your boundaries to feel loved. The way you silence your truth to keep peace. The way you distract, overthink, compare, self-abandon, and seek approval. All of it. It's armor you put on as a child. But today, that armor has become your cage. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." You can change your outer world 100 times, move cities, get promoted, switch relationships. But if you don't master what's going on within, you'll keep repeating the same story in a different place. Now imagine something different. Imagine waking up one day and realizing you don't need validation to feel worthy, that you don't need to fix others to feel safe, that you can sit in stillness without being afraid of your own mind. That's not just emotional strength. That's freedom. So, here's your invitation. Start paying attention to your hidden habits. When you feel triggered, pause. When you seek approval, ask why. When you avoid silence, lean into it. Because your power doesn't come from becoming someone new. It comes from returning to who you were before the world made you forget. As Marcus Aurelius, the Roman Stoic emperor, once wrote in Meditations, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. You already have what it takes. You always did. But strength begins the moment you stop running and start facing." If this message resonated with you, it means there's a deeper part of you ready to rise. Not tomorrow, not next week, now. So take the first small step. Breathe, reflect, change one habit, and keep showing up. Because the strongest people in this world, they aren't the loudest. They're the ones who've quietly fought their inner battles and won. If this video spoke to something real inside you, share it with someone who needs to hear it too. Tap subscribe if you're ready to rise above your old patterns and finally step into your real power. Your future self is already thanking you.